someone will be in need of his services. He can still provide a 4-5 starter, even a 3 in some rotations. So I do think there's a team out there. It's just going to be how much money the Yankees are willing to eat.
You are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Yankees, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. With me, as usual, my co-host, Brian McKeon. Brian.
Stacey, we're almost there.
We are almost there. The off season is almost over. I can't believe it. But before we get started, don't forget, subscribe to Locked On Yankees on whichever podcasting platform you prefer. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like our videos, hit the bell so you're notified when our videos go live. On today's show, which of the Yankees dynasty teams compared to the Eagles and their drubbing of the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? I have an interesting answer for you that you might not agree with, but we'll find that out in the comments. How will the infield shake out in 2025? But first, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. And there are still some things up in the air.
Yeah, some answers we don't have. Aaron Boone will speak tomorrow as well. I don't know. I don't have word yet on if it'll be broadcasted on the S Network. I'm sure it will. I'd assume it would be.
I would think so.
Yeah. But he will speak for the first time in the offseason tomorrow. I was actually shocked, Stacey. Last week, I was at the St. John's Marquette game at the Garden, and Aaron Boone was there. I would have thought he'd be in Florida already. It just felt like you'd think the manager's there like all summer, like all winter, I guess, and he wasn't. But yeah, nonetheless, he will speak tomorrow. He will give updates on the
today.
team.
You mean today?
Today. He will speak today. Give updates on the team, all of that kind of stuff. And one of the main updates people are looking for and wondering by week's end is whether or not Marcus Stroman will show up. And Marcus Stroman has this reputation throughout his career of being a very sensitive ball player. Let's just call it what it is. He doesn't like people talking about him. He doesn't like people's opinions about him. And he is very quick to defend himself, sometimes to the most extreme of ways. And I think it's very well documented and very well known and assumed the Yankees are going to be moving on from Marcus Stroman going into next year. I highly doubt. I'd be unbelievably surprised if he's on the Yankees opening day roster come opening day at the start of the end of March. So Stacey, I think it's up for concern and up for question. Is he going to show up? This isn't really a thing that happens in baseball very often of whether or not a player shows up. This happens a lot more in football where players hold out and they don't show up to camp. It's very more common in football when you don't have a contract. But for all intents and purposes, Marcus Stroman doesn't have a contract with the Yankees going into this year. Now, he is under contract. He is getting paid $18 million, but they are actively shopping him. It is very well known they are looking for a suitor to take him. So I wonder if he'll show up. Right now, my gut says no. Right now, I think he will not show up, and he will probably put up some cryptic social media post about how the Yankees don't believe in him or appreciate his efforts or whatever. But I think that's where this is heading, because I don't think they have any intention of him being on the Major League roster this year. I don't know how you feel, but when you go out and acquire Max Fried, I don't think the Yankees, when you have a guy like, when you have Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, and Garrett Cole on your staff, there's no motivation to go to a 6-man rotation. There just isn't. So I don't know where Marcus Stroman even fits on this roster, but I don't think he's going to be on the roster come the end of March.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think they were hoping that someone would take him off their hands, and that hasn't happened. And I know that on social media, his Instagram profile picture is basically like the color of my shirt. It's just gray. There's nothing there. He posted stories today. But I don't know. This is an odd situation. The closest thing I can compare this to is Aroldis Chapman not showing up for the playoffs a few years ago. Like just being like,
yeah,
I'm done. I dip. Gone.
Which is much worse, by the way, going into the postseason. Much worse.
Yeah.
But it to me, Marcus Stroman has been one of these guys throughout his career. Just has been. And this is the first, he can take this insulting if he wants to. I'm sure he will, based on his track record. But I could see how a professional athlete would find this insulting the way the Yankees have handled this. I mean, it is very public that they are looking to move on from him. They have not kept it quiet remotely, and they have not shut any of those rumors down. So I can see how he'd be insulted by this, but quite frankly, he should be insulted by this from last October because he didn't make the playoff roster, and then he made the World Series roster basically because they had no option and they just needed a body. So I don't know. He can't be in good graces with them. I can't picture him wanting to stay here. But I mean, again, it's much more common with football players. You don't really see this happen in baseball very often because pitchers need their work. But Marcus Stroman could very easily put in the work on his own and make his trade value high. I still do think they'll find a suitor for him. I do. Someone will be in need of his services. He can still provide a 4-5 starter, even a 3 in some rotations. So I do think there's a team out there. It's just going to be how much money the Yankees are willing to eat.
Here's the thing. If the defense is better, is the defense better? Has it gotten better? Yeah, I think it's gotten a little better because he's the type of guy, and Cashman even said this in the interview where we kind of blasted him for saying things about Glaber, but he did say that the team let Stroman down behind him in some of those games, and that
he wasn't terrible.
Right. Like there were some instances where, he had that really great game. I can't remember who it was against, and Clay Holmes blew the save, and Stroman was very diplomatic about it, immediately on IG and said, look, we're a team and things happen. And,
You know what, though? But for every one of those instances, and when Marcus Stroman does stuff like that, it does feel very calculated. It feels like he's taking that opportunity when a closer blows a save and the fans are ripping the closer. It feels like he's taking that opportunity to make himself look good. Like, it's a team effort and we're all a team and we all, making himself look like a captainly leader kind of player. He's also the first guy when he's ever slighted remotely, and it's not even an insult towards him, to go out and rip the team and remember the incident with the Blue Jays when he found out that he was traded from Toronto, and remember he was the top trade target that entire deadline, and he was so personally insulted that a team that's out of the race wants to move on from him when he's having a great year. So unbelievably insulted that a team would ever do this, which I don't know. To me, if you're a pitcher, that's a compliment if they're going to move you at the deadline because someone else wants you. So
right.
Regardless, you remember how aggravated he was in that report that came out that he threw a storm in the clubhouse when he found out he was traded to the Mets and not the Yankees because he wanted to be a Yankee. Mm-hmm. And he threw a fit. So for every one of the moments where he conveniently goes to Instagram and defends his teammate for blowing the save and not getting the win for him, which again is commendable in a leadership move, sure. For every one of those moments, Marcus Stroman also has moments where he loses it because he got traded from one team to the other. That does come on your resume too. That does also. Marcus Stroman is a very emotional player, and he's very quick to blame others for his problems. So for one, what I'm just trying to say? I'm trying to make it fair on both sides. For every, what you're getting when it comes to Marcus Stroman. And I'm sure that when they move on from him, there will be some choice words leaked out into the media that Marcus Stroman has for the Yankees. The team that he beloved and wanted to play for, he'll all of a sudden hate.
Do you think the Yankees will... I know they haven't shot down the rumors that they're trying to shop him. But this sometimes happens with other players too. Do you think the Yankees get in touch with him and say, look, they explain how things are happening and just try and talk him into coming to camp? Do they get Aaron Judge to do it? How do they navigate this situation?
I don't think they do anything, to be honest with you. And I think they let him not show up if he doesn't want to show up. And, because here's the thing, Stacey, where is his place on this team? It's not like he's a fringe starter who could maybe potentially start in AAA, and then if they have an injury, he gets there isn't that room for him. Right. And even if one of their 5 starters right now was hurt coming in and they didn't know if he'd make it to opening day, maybe then he'd show up. But right now, there is no room for him on this roster. There is no place for his services. So I don't know if it serves them well for him to show up. I do think they'll find a suitor. There has to be. My thing is, do they find that suitor that's willing to take the maximum amount of money possible? To me, a lot of teams are probably telling them, we'll take Marcus Stroman, We ain't paying him $18 million.
Right.
That's you who gave him that contract. So you're going to eat $15 million, and we'll eat $3 million. I think and the Yankees are probably trying to find the best deal possible. But at a certain point, as spring training goes on, Stacey, they're going to have to maybe potentially eat majority of it. They're going to have to do whatever they're going to have to do to get rid of him, because at this point, there's nothing they can do. At this point, you can't go forward with him I mean, I don't know if you feel different, but I don't know where there's room for him to fit and where there is room for him on this roster. There isn't.
Yeah, I would agree with that part. But as they always say, you can never have enough pitching. I mean, we've seen that with the Dodgers and how many different guys they've signed who are actual starters.
But that philosophy works when you have guys with options, right? When you have guys that could be major leaguers but could also start the year in AAA, or you have guys that are veterans,
or someone who could possibly go into the bullpen if they need them to, which I don't think he could. Yeah,
and you don't have that flexibility with Marcus Stroman. There really is no one on the roster that you have that flexibility with, right? Clark Schmidt was too good last year to start him in AAA or the bullpen. He was just too good as a starter, right? Luis Gil is coming off the Rookie of the Year, so you can't put him in the bullpen or AAA. He's coming off too good of a year. And then your other three guys are the three. See now, a rotation with Luis Gil and Clark Schmidt in those guys could fit into a 6-man rotation. The problem is Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, and Max Fried. You can't have three guys like that making over $30 million a year that are going to be in a 6-man rotation. They're not going to get enough starts. So I know people sometimes like 6-man rotation when it's a guy with an injury history or that's in that rotation. It buys him a little more time to heal up. But when you have three ace quality pitchers like that in your rotation, Stacey, you can't afford for them to have 3 or 4 less starts throughout the year. You need them to get their full 35 starts if possible. So I don't think they don't want to go to a 6-man rotation. They want Garrett Cole to start 35 games. They want Max Fried to start 35 games. They want Carlos Rodon to start 35 games. That's their goal. So adding Marcus Stroman to a 6-man rotation doesn't work. Putting him in the bullpen, find me that. And again, is Marcus Stroman an $18 million bullpen arm? Also, that doesn't work for them. So there's too many avenues to me where this doesn't work out, and it's gonna have to be a breakup that is gonna, to me, turn out messy. That's the only way things go with Marcus Stroman usually.
Yeah. All right, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on our videos, hit the notifications so you know when our videos go up. You can also join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. The link is in our description. You get text from us. You can text us questions, comments, reactions to trades and signings. We send out the lineups during the season, roster moves, and breaking news, so you don't have to check social media. There's a 14-day free trial. Coming up, with spring training officially starting this week, we're all still wondering, how will the infield shake out? We'll discuss that next.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on the game like a fourth-quarter comeback, you can always stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. And plus, the app is easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks again for making Locked On Yankees your first listen. Remember that every Friday is Fan Mail Friday. You can leave questions underneath our videos during the week, or you can join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club. Those fans get top priority during Fan Mail Friday. That link is in our description. So, Stacey, Brian Hoke's article came out right after the Super Bowl ended the night prior, and it basically discussed the where the Yankees are at going into next year, mainly highlighting some deep roster concerns that they have. And one of his roster concerns is, I think everyone's big roster concern for the Yankees, what is the infield going to look like? We really don't know. Aaron Boone has not really painted a picture for us. We'll see if he does in his introductory press conference, but let's be real, Stacey. Aaron Boone is going to give us a very diplomatic, calculated response when they ask him about the starting infield. Well, we'll see. We'll see where guys are at going into spring training. We're going to see how they look, and we'll make our decision based on that.
I
That's
just
what
hope
he'll.
he doesn't come right out and say DJ's our starting third baseman like he normally does.
Yeah, I don't think you will get that. I don't. I
Okay.
think they've already pretty much announced that Jazz Chisholm is their starting second base, so that's what their plan is. At least they've announced. Volpe is the only recurring guy in the infield from last opening day that will be returning to shortstop for the infield at opening day this year.
That's kind of crazy to
And
think about, isn't it?
yeah, at what 23 years old or however old he is now.
Yeah.
And Paul Goldschmidt will now be at first base. Those are the defined roles. We've both been caught publicly, I guess, saying that we don't think DJ LeMahieu was going to make it out of spring training, or we don't know if he's going to make it out of spring training.
Yeah.
My doubts are certainly alive on that one. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I don't know if you said that or not. If you think he's going to make it out of spring training or not. I don't think he will. I think he's going to get hurt before spring training is over.
Yeah, I'm thinking something might pop up.
So at that point, you're looking at either of the Oswaldos. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at Oswald or Oswaldo to be starting at third base at the start of the year. And that's what their best option is. It's either that or they're going to acquire someone before the spring ends or the spring training ends. I don't know which direction they go in. Every day that goes longer, it seems like Alex Bregman is stingent on getting a long-term deal, and the Yankees are not going to provide him with that.
No.
I think the only option at this point is a Nolan Arenado trade. And the more and more the days go on, the less and less the news. It feels like every couple of weeks the news sparks up more and a report comes out that they're interested and then it dies off. So I don't know what the interest level of them and Nolan Arenado is at this point. I'd hope it's high, but I don't know if it is. And I can't sit here and say that they're going to get a deal done by the end of, they're trying to cut salary Marcus Stroman. And maybe Marcus Stroman is involved in some kind of Nolan Arenado swap trade at that point. I don't know, but it does feel strange that they could be going into the year with either of the Oswaldos or Oswalds, whatever you want to call it, either of them starting at third base. Two guys they really have over the last, what is this experiment gone on now for 3 years, Stacey? Two guys over the last 3 years that they have not given a definitive long-term chance at proving themselves in this roster to either of them. So for the last 3 seasons, neither of them are good enough to get a long-term legitimate chance at making a roster spot or proving their stake on this roster. But now we're going to start opening day in a World Series, hopefully you're following a pennant. That just feels weird, no?
Yeah, I guess. But Oswaldo wasn't really supposed to be. It was Oswald and Volpe. Those were the two that fought for shortstop. Peraza had come up at the end of 22. He played in the ALCS. He played in the playoffs.
Really well, too, might I add.
Yeah, like he did for a kid who was thrust into that. He made some pretty good, pretty nifty defensive plays in a high-pressure situation. And just because he had a bad spring training, they're like, okay, we're giving this to Anthony Volpe. And it was kind of like, I thought it was going to be Peraza's turn. Like, what?
And I'm personally, just to chime in, I don't see how a guy getting a chance in the postseason in the biggest pressure-packed spot possible, when a team got swept, by the way, is a legitimate opportunity for him to prove himself. I just don't agree with that.
How so?
Getting the time, sure, but he got time, Stacey, in a 4-game sweep when no one else on your roster was performing. That's the chance that he got. That's the opportunity he gets. And the next year he starts in AAA and really never gets consistent play time at the major league level.
Right.
You need baseball is a sport of reps, of repetition. You can't let a young player get an appearance. You can't show him the vote of confidence of, hey, kid, you're starting against the Astros in the championship series. And then all of a sudden, at the next opening day, he's starting in Scranton. That's not fair to the kid.
Right. I agree with that. They've been jerking around Peraza way too long because you held on to both those guys. I've said this ad nauseum. You didn't get Correa. You didn't get Seager. You didn't make any moves to get a shortstop because you had these two kids that you wanted to bring up.
Exactly.
And people pretty much knew that if things didn't work out with Glaber, because my thought was always, if things didn't work out with Glaber, they could use one of them at shortstop, one of them at second.
They've got backup, yeah.
Right? And Oswaldo was the kind of guy that the Yankees were envisioning him as a super utility guy, which he basically is because he plays so many different positions. He wasn't really supposed to be a guy who starts at third base.
But then why is DJ LeMahieu on the roster?
Right.
If he's
because they're paying him
guy,
because they're paying him how much money?
But you know what though? But to me, and this isn't me directly talking to you. This is me directly talking to Yankee world. That's not a good enough excuse. You're the New York damn Yankees. If that salary doesn't work, cut the guy, pay him the salary, and get out of town. You can't be. The Yankees are in a different situation than other teams are in Major League Baseball. You cannot sit there and give me we're still paying him, so we're going to keep him on the roster. You are one of the teams in sports that has the ability to pay him to go away. And if that's what has to be done, if he's your super utility guy, then make him your super utility guy and move on. The Peraza thing to me, again, and I know that you agree with this, and I'm sure a lot of Yankee fans agree with this. You can't give him the opportunity in the championship series and then start on the next year in AAA. And even throughout the year last year, the little spurts they'd call him up, they never gave him a consistent amount of playtime to actually prove himself. And he's never gotten that throughout his Major League career. Throw the baby in the pool and let it sink or swim, but figure it out. Because it's a top-tier prospect that we've been hearing about for years now, and his call-up was 3 years ago. He's got 4 more years left till his control is over, and then who knows what his value is at. He's going to leave and go to another team and get a starting role and then become a good player. You have to figure out if you have something in him or not. You can't just keep, like you said, jerking him around and hoping that you're not going to find out if he's a superstar or not.
Yeah, because my solution 2 seasons ago now, right, going into 23, was hoping that when he was down in AAA and they started giving him reps at third, I thought, okay, maybe he can switch over to third, Volpe at second, Gleyber Volpe is shortstop, Gleyber at second.
Mm-hmm.
You get both of them on the team and both of them there. And then I also had the thought that if Gleyber left in free agency, you could move Peraza to second base if you needed to.
But this is, again, like you've said, they've jerked him around too much at this point, and
it's too much.
He's not going to prove himself. He's played enough games at AAA at this point. He's either a major leaguer or not, and it feels like the way they're treating him is he's a quadruple A baseball player, which is the classic term of he's too good for AAA, but he's not good enough for the major leagues. And if that's the case, fine. But move him in from a bullpen arm at the deadline. Someone will want him. But to not give him a long, how much of an opportunity did they give Anthony Volpe? How much did Anthony Volpe struggle in his rookie year? And they kept trotting him out there to figure it out. And you know what? He started off the year hot last year. He evolved into a major leaguer. He had his ups and downs last year for sure. But he's evolved into a major league consistent player. You have to give Peraza that same opportunity. Or don't, but then trade him in a deadline for something effective. Yeah. You don't keep doing what you're doing with him now because it's not working.
Right. I agree. All right. Coming up, there was a major drubbing at the Super Bowl on Sunday night. And I'm not talking about Kendrick Lamar against Drake. I'm talking about the Chiefs being embarrassed on international TV by the Eagles. And Brian was wondering if their dominating performance compares to any of the 90s Yankees World Series victories. And I have an answer. You can find it out next.
So, Stacey, a lot of news coming out of the Super Bowl. I know a lot of people, including friends of mine, were very aggravated that Taylor Swift was not shown nearly enough in the Super Bowl. People were not happy with the Super Bowl halftime performance. People were not happy with the performance of Patrick Mahomes going after a three-peat. Would have been the first three-peat since the Lakers in 2000, 2001, 2002. And then prior to that, well, in the middle of that, I guess, was the Yankees. Now, it does feel like the Yankees' 90s dynasty is still, to this day, I have to say, is more impressive than the Chiefs one. Now, the Chiefs, I think, do have the factor of free agency being as active as it is now, that the Yankees, were able to kind of outspend everybody back then, but that's a debate for another day. I wanted to know from you, because rarely a team that's been as dominant as Kansas City, that has basically, when do they lose? People's top handicap on the game was, I'm betting on Kansas City because they don't lose. So that was their handicap on Kansas City going into this game. It is very rare to see a team that's that good go into the game and just get drubbed like they did. They got run over. It was a steamrolling by the Eagles. You basically knew the game was over. Definitely at the half. Prior to that, though, you knew this game was over. And what I wanted to know from you, because am I aware of these series? Absolutely. But full disclosure, I was born in the middle of the Yankees' last dynasty. So I'm not aware. I was not watching those series directly on television live as you were. So I want to know, and it's got to be different watching it as a fan, for sure. There's no way that it's the same as watching it as an outsider. But were any of the Yankees' World Series victories as surprising or dominant as the Eagles' performance was against the Chiefs?
I mean, if you look at the scores for this series, it wasn't like they were drubbing this team. But I have to say, the 1999 World Series really surprised me. 98, I wasn't shocked about because they won 114 games in the
Yeah.
regular season. And the only
They were
reason
the
they
Chiefs
had,
that year.
the only reason they had issues with Cleveland was they just had issues with Cleveland all season, and it kind of carried over into the playoffs. And then they escaped that. And then they swept San Diego. But in 1999, the Braves went into the World Series with a 103-59 regular season record. The Yankees were 98-64. Nothing to sneeze at, right?
Sure.
And I think the 99 team is underrated by people because everyone looks to the 114 win team the year before. But the 99 team was just as good and had many of the same guys, but also new guys. You could go back in time and interview everyone before that World Series. No one would have expected the Yankees to sweep the Braves in that series.
Yeah.
That's how it was shocking.
Especially with the run the Braves were on at that time, winning, 14 consecutive NL East titles. You go on a run like that, it doesn't seem like that team ever gets swept. People forget, by the way, and I think it gets failed to be mentioned way too often, of the ultimate sports failures, and maybe it's because the Braves did get a championship out of it, right? They do have the title. But Stacey, with how good they were and how good their pitch, they had 3 Hall of Famers on their starting pitching staff.
Yeah.
And that Braves team was good every year, and they played the Yankees twice in the World Series, but they never won. And no one talks about it, right? It's never brought up.
What do you mean, never?
Like in sports, when you talk about sports history and the ultimate failures, that team, people have no issues ever bringing up the Buffalo Bills who went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost all 4. People always bring that up. No one brings up the Atlanta Braves winning 14 straight NL East titles and winning 1 World Series and all of that. Now, I guess winning the 1 title does help. But Stacey, was it a talking point back then that the Braves are the team they'll lose in the World Series or the CS?
Kind of. It became that, especially after 99. It was just like, all right, well, I guess they're this team that they're really good at winning divisions, but they just can't win the World Series. And the shocking thing was the Yankees finished the 96 series. They were down 0-2. They won 4 in a row to win it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sweep the Braves in 99. So essentially they beat them in 8 straight games in those 2 World Series. Like, I understand there were years in between it.
Yeah, but yeah.
But what the Yankees did, 96, they sweep the last 4. 98, they sweep the Padres. 99, they sweep the Braves. And it almost seemed like they were never going to lose in the World Series.
Well, I mean, I've heard from people that have said back then too, like the expectation, you just expected them to win. There was no
matter how bad they did, 2000, they were awful in the regular season, but they still had the same core of guys who had been to the previous 2 and some who were also still there from 96. And you just thought, all right, once they get into the playoffs, they'll be fine. And that's
so I'm surprised you didn't use that series because the Mets were better than them that year. And the Mets came, the Yankees struggled, I know, through that entire last month of that season in September, right? Didn't they have like a losing streak in September that year?
Yeah, they were awful.
Yeah, so I'm surprised you don't take, maybe because of the Mets narrative that was around that team at that time coming into that series, but I feel like there weren't a lot of Yankee fans that were unbelievably confident in 2000 going into that series.
Yeah, that's true.
And they won it in 5 games too. That was basically almost a sweep too.
Sports Illustrated predicted that the Mets were going to win in 5. And then the Yankees ended up winning in 5. And the only reason they lost that middle game was because El Duque was sick.
Yeah.
If El Duque was regular El Duque, they could have swept that series too. And they would have had all those World Series games. But I don't know. I just feel like 99 was so shocking because I don't think anyone expected the Braves to get swept the way they did.
I'm curious of your thought process too, because one of the ones that comes up that I feel like if I was watching as seriously as I do now, I would have expected nothing short of this. And I think this is one of the more shocking parts of the dynasty is the loss in 01. Because I can't imagine with what happened to the country and the city in particular at that point, that anyone thought the Yankees coming off 3 consecutive championships and not to mention which gets hidden in the 01 year often is beating that Mariner team down 2-0 in that series. That Mariner team was one of the greatest teams ever, regular season wise. Coming back in that series to beat that team makes no sense. And they weren't great in 01 either. So losing that World Series to me has to be more shocking than anything, especially from the dramatics that happened in that World Series, the emotion that was going through everyone. Was that the most surprising of the dynasty outcomes?
Oh yeah, because they hit the home run in the top of the ninth. They go up, and you just think, okay, Mo's coming in. He's going to lock it down. Yeah. We're going to win 4 in a row. Like, that's basically what it was. And then everything started falling apart. And you're thinking, oh my God, they're actually going to lose this in like the worst way possible with their best player on the mound. Like, it was unbelievable how that unfolded because it was so quick. Like, you went from elation thinking, oh my God, they're going to win this. And after everything that happened, you're thinking they're going to win this. And the city's going to be like, not healed, lifted. But at least things will feel a little better. And then in like a matter of 7 minutes, everything completely fell apart. Kind of like game 5 of the 2024 World Series.
I feel like you just feel and sports doesn't always, it's not scripted, obviously, and it doesn't work on narrative basis all the time, but it does feel like from a narrative point of view, how would the Yankees have not won the World Series in that year? Of any year they should win, it should have been that year. So it would have been 4 in a row at that point. And it just does go to show, too. People forget, the 95 Yankees were awesome. The 94 Yankees were awesome. The 97 Yankees losing the postseason. Like, there were trials and tribulations to get to that dynasty. Kind of what the Chiefs are going through, too. You're not going to – it's so impossible to win every single year. That's why teams don't do it very often. The Yankees could have had 4 in a row. They lose in 01. They lose in 03. There were playoff runs that went through, so it's not like it's an automatic thing. Look at how good the Dodgers have been over the last few years. They've got 2 titles out of it, and one's a COVID one. So it's not as if this happens every single year. I was just very curious because I don't think even through the Yankees dynasty and even through the Patriots dynasty, there was never a performance that the Patriots throughout all the losses, right? The Eagle loss in the Super Bowl, and the 2 Giant losses. They never looked like the Chiefs looked. They never got embarrassed. Right. And the Chiefs now in two of these Super Bowls have been embarrassed. And even in the Yankees in the 03 loss to the Marlins and the 01 loss, they never got embarrassed. They never were, played off the field. I just find that really strange.
Yeah. I think the only comparison is game 7 of 04 because they were completely humiliated. In the ALCS. But if you're looking at championships, it was rare for the Yankees to
not show up.
The one really bad game I remember was the Pettit game in 01, where he was clearly tipping his pitches and they were just having batting practice on him. And that was another instance where the Yankees could have won that series if he had pitched okay in that game. And then they pushed it to a game 7.
The legitimate one bad postseason start he had in his career.
Right. Well, I wasn't there because it was in Arizona, so can't blame me. But every time I was there, he won. So, that's my answer. I'm thinking 99 just because of how good the Braves were coming in, that the Yankees were able to sweep them. Not that the Yankees were bad, but like they were pretty evenly matched because people felt that way about the Eagles and the Chiefs. Like, I didn't think it was going to be
it was even,
like people were predicting the scores to be like 27-24. Like, everything was close. No one predicted 40-22.
It was basically a sweep.
Yeah, pretty much.
You got a sweep. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this week, as we keep saying, 5 days. We're back to 5 days. Pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. And we'll have actual Yankee news to talk about. We still will have speculation, obviously, because things can still happen during spring training, but we'll actually have Yankee news to discuss, which makes me very, very happy. How about you?
I'm thrilled. I can't wait. Actual newsworthy stuff to talk about. I'm sure both of us will have problems with something Boone says tomorrow, and I can't wait to dissect it.
Oh, I mean, if I had the money to bet on it, I would bet on that. Yeah, that he'll say at least 2 things that'll annoy me. So that'll be fun for all of you guys because we'll have to parse through what he says. That'll be the show. That'll be the next show. We'll go through what Boone said and talk about how angry it makes us.
Can't wait.
I'm just kidding. Thank you for making Locked On Yankees your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings you a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason, although now we're getting into spring training. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Yankees. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias.
And I'm Brian McKeon. We'll catch you tomorrow.